Hi, this is Kevin Conroy, and you're listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
You are now on the inside of what I like to call the circle of trust.
We are all connected in the great circle of life.
You know something, Bert? What? I think you and I are going in circles.
It feels like we're going in circles.
The circle is now complete. When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
Because it's a circle.
Yeah, we heard about the circle.
Yes, we're familiar with shapes.
Hi, this is Greg.
This is Chuck. And this is Dan, and we are Talking in Circles, brought to you by the Geekcast Radio Network. And this week, we are very proud to have our second guest, and of course, we're going to have a second guest. We're going to double up this time.
Because it's the sequel, right?
Yes, exactly. You got to go.
They always got to have Robin in there with Batman.
Exactly. I would like to welcome Emily and Crystal from Wayward Studios. They run a great online comic that we'll get into, and I had the opportunity to check out their stuff from Baltimore Comic-Con, and now we're bringing them on the show to kind of get into what they do and bring them into the wonderful world of Talking in Circles. So thank you both for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Nice to be here.
Thank you. For those that don't know, do you mind just kind of giving me like a brief overview of what Wayward Studios is? And I am saying that correctly. I know I like to mispronounce words, so I'm going to make sure I'm not mispronouncing that.
You're saying it just fine.
Awesome.
Wayward Studios is a partnership between Crystal and I, and we just work on various independent projects together.
I believe, just reading from your site online, that both of you met in college, and that's kind of where you started this whole, or at least started the process of writing comics together. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's funny. We didn't really partner up so much in college, any more so than our group of friends. We tended to sort of hang out, draw things, write things, shoot the breeze creatively. And it wasn't until everybody kind of scattered to the winds, and me and Em separately on our own had started up comic projects, and we got back in touch because we were the only people we knew who were still working on comics after college. And so I don't even remember how it really started. We were just chatting with each other back and forth about this problem or that problem, or how it was going with our comics.
So the comics that I know you have right now, you have a, at least on the site right now, you have a couple different ones. Have those been ideas that you've been kind of just come to you recently since the site has opened, or are those ones that you've kind of worked on since you've been writing comics?
Well, I know my main project, Jacocha, I've been working on since I was a freshman in high school. So
wow,
it's kind of been a long time coming.
Wow.
Mind you, it's one of those comics that she's completely redrawn and scrapped like 4 times. 5 times? What is it? 6 times 4. Now? Only 4?
Yeah.
And my comic aspect was the same way, only Jacocha at least kept the same name every time. My comic, I kept changing the names. It's existed in one form or another since
I think
at least early high school, possibly middle school, because it was basically the role-playing adventures of me and my group of friends from middle school.
Oh, wow.
So I don't recall at what point it really actually started being a comic versus just being random internet chat rooms late into the night during the ye olde era of text-based chat rooms back in like 98.
Wow. Yeah, back when the internet was all gears and, ran on steam power.
Like literal, like cast iron tubes.
Yeah.
Not these fancy plastic tubes we have these days, but like cast iron with lead solder.
Very nice. So you said you played role-playing games in high school. So what type of role-playing games did you partake in?
I was actually part of the role-playing club at my school, and D&D was kind of the first thing, but I played, D&D, a couple different White Wolf expansions. I actually DM'd Besom, which is like an anime-based role-playing game. Gosh, what's the one that's like set in like a Fallout kind of world and has ridiculously overcomplicated rules? I think it's based in the GURPS universe. No, Detroit.
That is very close to Fallout.
Rifts? I want to say it's called Rifts or something.
Okay.
Gosh, but yeah, mainly those. And a lot of the people I dealt with actually were writing their own campaigns and writing their own storylines, in part because we were high schoolers, so we were dirt poor and we couldn't afford the expansion modules and stuff. And partially just because I seem to have always fallen in with a crowd of people that wanted to just write their own stories.
I lack the creativity to play role playing games, but I think Greg, you partake in the wonderful world of Dungeons and Dragons. Am I wrong?
It was just way too much math for me. That's why I tended to go more towards playing games like Fallout or Skyrim. I love
D&D isn't too bad. You would have hated Rifts. People have jokingly called it Dungeons and Dragons: The Calculus Edition.
Oh god!
The entire GURP system is notorious for that.
It's too much math, too much trying to figure out what different things you can do and at what times you could do them. It was just way too much. I always had somebody there telling me what to do. I don't really play that much at this point. It was mostly because of a girlfriend I had at the time, but
of course, that's how you get into everything, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, I'm into most generally nerdy stuff, and I wanted to try it out, but
I know you brought up Jacocha. I know, Crystal, you do the colors for that, and Emily, you mentioned that's your project. So is that the only book that you kind of have joined in together on so far?
We pretty much work on all of our stuff together to some extent or another. I was helping out a lot with some of the preliminary coloring with Aspect, and I also did it for a while with Skyborne, but I've kind of fallen back to kind of a consultant or an editor.
And that's in part just because we've both gotten really busy, and I was starting to slack with getting the line art to her, and she was starting to slack with getting me the flats colors back.
Okay. We got help.
Yeah, my friend Ricky is unemployed, and she seemed interested in learning how all this stuff went together. So I've been starting to teach her how to do flats in Photoshop.
I will first admit I am artistic illiterate, so I can look at something and think that looks pretty, but that's pretty much
pretty pictures.
Greg, he's like yourselves. You guys went to school for graphic design, but
yes.
So the coloring that you use, is it mostly digital coloring? Or I thought looking at some of it, I'm like, almost looked like watercoloring. I don't know if that was kind of what you use or if that was just the way it was made.
It's ironic because watercolor is like my worst medium ever. I hate watercolors with a passion. Not how they look, but because I just suck at them really bad. All of my coloring for all the stuff I'm printing is entirely digital now. I do make like sketch cards and things on the side using markers, and I keep intending to get back into acrylic wash, which was one of the things I was better at. But reproducing colors from traditional media, it's just really touchy and annoying and obnoxious. So I got out of that pretty quickly. I used to do the covers for like the editions I did back in high school, and even going into part of my college comic stuff, I did do some with traditional mediums. I was actually really good at airbrush, surprisingly.
Oh, wow.
So I did a couple of the covers with airbrush in college. But God, it takes way too long.
I could imagine.
Me I think I put in 20 or 30 hours on a cover. And
that's crazy. Wow.
Yeah. Airbrush is it can be really fast, but to get like good depth of colors, it's a really slow medium, surprisingly. Because you have to kind of layer and softly add and add and add. It's almost like oil paints in that way. That like a really good oil painting, you're layering like translucent layers of color and letting them dry, and layering color and letting them dry. And it's the same way with airbrush if you're doing like a really detailed, really color intensive work, it's like layer and dry and layer and dry. And if you work in it too fast, you get stuff that bleeds over itself because, the material's still wet.
I learned something new today because I could, my extent of airbrushing was when I went to the boardwalk and I would get a t-shirt that was airbrushed. So I had no idea that you could even go through and make a cover with it. That's pretty insane. Do you have any of those on your website at all, or are those just personal?
I didn't, because airbrush takes so long. I think I only ever made like 7 artworks ever.
Oh, wow.
If you go to my DeviantArt though, I did a painting that still hangs by my husband's computer of his character from World of Warcraft. He had a troll warrior that I did a painting of.
So with World of Warcraft, are you also a player as well?
I am, and I got sucked back in recently, and it's really killed my... Yes. I have some issues with Draenor, mostly that I feel like I'm pushing buttons and getting rewards. It feels a little bit like a Skinner box now.
Oh, wow.
But there's other things that are really awesome with this expansion. And I missed all of Pandaria just because I put it aside to try and get Aspect Book 1 and Jacocha Book 1 out, me and Em went together for this massive crunch back in 2012, I think that was, that we were getting out like 4 or 5 pages of each of our comics every week. So we were basically getting like 4 hours of sleep a night. Jeez. And then going to work, doing a full day of work, coming home, and spending all our time on the comic.
It's awesome.
And like, there was no room for video games. There was no room for anything else.
Wait, no room for video? So you chose sleep over video games?
I chose comics over sleep and video games.
Wow.
I'm not kidding about the 4 hours of sleep part. I would go to bed at like 1 a.m, and I would get up for work at 5:30 in the morning because my day job, I work 7 to 3:30.
Oh wow!
I do pre-press all day, so we do kind of a slightly early shift so that we're available for our East Coast clients because their 9 to 5 shift is more like our 7 to 3 shift. Okay. Also, it means I miss rush hour traffic, which here in Seattle can really suck.
I'm jealous. We had a little brief discussion about traffic before we started the podcast, and I am not a fan.
Who is? Really?
Yeah. I was going to say, people who are fans of traffic have a problem.
Oh, I know who's a fan of traffic. Traffic cops. That's about the only person I can think of.
No, I think even them.
Yeah. I got pulled over the other week, actually. Thanks for bringing that up.
Part of the reason I finally got a new car is I got pulled over for my tabs being expired, and I had already had that happen last Christmas. And my car failed its emission test, so I'm like, pay $300 for the chance of them fixing my engine and getting my new tabs, or just suck it up and get a new car, because my car is like 14 years old.
Oh, wow.
I don't do much mileage. Like, I'm bitching about traffic, but even now I only live like 7 miles from work. Before we moved into our house, I only lived 2 miles from work.
That is...
So, I was putting like 5,000 miles on my car per year.
You can basically coast to your work. You probably didn't even have to press
I thought about actually getting a bicycle sometimes. I used to bicycle up it. The only thing is, it's a really steep hill. It was like 2 miles straight downhill to work and like straight uphill the way home. And I'm just not in the shape I used to be in high school. Because I used to do that every day in high school.
Yeah.
I would coast to school like 30 miles an hour down the hill and then like chug uphill the whole way home. It was 2 miles each way.
That's why you get somebody to pick you up.
Yeah, I never had that. My parents would get in late at night, they'd leave early in the morning. No one was ever available to like give me a ride to school. If I had a flat tire, I was hosed.
Besides, if you could get rides, we couldn't be yelling about kids getting off of our front lawns and walking 2 miles both ways in the snow.
Yeah, I'm assuming that uphill 2 miles is both directions, right?
Naturally.
Yeah.
No. But
I'm super jealous of this stuff because I'm similar to me. Like my wife, she works we live close to her work. She's like, she'll come home and like, oh, I had a lot of traffic today. It was a 20-minute drive. I'm like, oh, that's good. Yeah. It took me 2 hours to get to work yesterday. Which is great because I get an opportunity to listen to podcasts, but that's great. But to get back on the comics, because this isn't Traffic Cast, no matter how hard I want it to be.
Traffic, the comic.
I could see that.
It's just the same panel over and over again.
Just a guy beating his head.
Terrible pacing.
Very realistic, though. It is very realistic. So, but Emily, I did have a question for you because just looking at a lot of your comics, we were talking about coloring earlier, and I noticed like with stuff like the day in the life of your cats and a few other your comics that you tend to go more the black and white with your comics, at least. Is that a personal choice? Is that something you prefer, or is it just a time consideration?
With those short comics you're seeing there, those are actually all 24-hour comics, so that's a time crunch.
Oh, jeez.
And I actually have been working on cleaning up my 4th 24-hour comic, which is also black and white, of course. But I tend to stay away from color because Crystal's so much better at it than I am, so I'm intimidated.
So this tells you something about our friendship, that the way I got started doing colors for Em, so her comic
she saw mine sucked.
Oh, yeah, like, I was gonna, come on, it's better if I tell the story. Let me tell the story. So, like, Jacocha was in black and white initially. She was doing pens, and she was doing markers over the pens. And it looked okay, but at some point, like, she decided she wanted to go into color. And I was kind of giving her some coaching and some tips. But yeah, it was kind of muddy, it was kind of weird, and I don't even remember what she was thinking with some of her layers in the Photoshop files. Like, this just tells you how good of friends we are, that I just flat out told her one day, I'm like, your colors kind of suck. Can I do your colors for you?
Unless she got suckered into doing all the hard work.
She says suckered, but I suckered her into giving me like $300 to do her first chapter because she wanted it done in a month.
Wow. At least you can be honest. You know, honesty is a key component to good friendship, so that's important.
Well, you really need that when you're working on stories together. Like, if the other person's just gonna like, oh yeah, your story is great, that's fine, yeah. Like, if you get that kind of input all the time, there's no point in talking shop. Like, you're not getting anything useful out of that.
Yeah.
Definitely. Greg and Chuck tell me I suck all the time, so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, your questioning is starting to suck, Dan, so I'm going to fill in. Is there a chance that any of the 24-hour comics that are black and white are just going to come out later as a color? Like,
I'll probably keep them black and white, honestly, but I do intend to go back and make them prettier.
Make them prettier as not changing any storylines, but just changing like just little mistakes here and there.
Bit. Yeah.
Part of it is, you know, keeping those in black and white. We actually do those as like super cheap mini comic prints when we go to conventions. They're like the $2 Chuck of our comic books. Keeping them really stark black and white means that we can actually get them printed at like a Kinko's, a Xerox, Best Value Copy, one of those like cheap photocopy places, and they still look good. And we can get them done like double-sided print through a photocopying company, and then we can do the folding and the stapling ourselves, and we can actually make a profit off selling them for like $3 a pop.
Oh, wow.
The other really cool thing about the cat comic is I've started pitching that as not just a fun little comic about my cats, but I've also pitched it as a coloring book for kids. And that has gone over really, really well.
Wow. So. That is actually a great idea. You know what? I can pitch that to my wife because she's, like I said, she's a teacher, so they're always looking for things to color. So,
she is always coloring something. She's always there with Crayola crayons and just going to town.
Yeah, and teaching me how to color, because one of these days I'll stay in the line. It's gonna one of these days. And when you say 24-hour comics, so that means you just bunker down and for one day you make that comic from start to finish? Is that kind of what that concept is?
Yep.
Yes.
Wow.
If you're really taking the competition seriously, you're not supposed to have any of the art, any of the storyline, anything worked out before the timer starts. And this was actually a concept started by Scott McCloud. There's like an official website. It's done on a specific date every year if you're really gung-ho about being part of the official competition.
Oh, wow. So within that do you then submit the comic you made to that competition, or is it more of like a friendly competition?
It's a friend. It's like an honorable mention kind of thing. Like, you get a pat on the back. Hooray, you did it. Look, yay. You're on
participation
the list.
Trophy?
Yeah, no cash prizes, no nothing.
Oh. But that's interesting. So you say when you go into that, you're just, it's more of a brainstorm at that moment, trying to figure it out, and then, going in with a blank slate and stuff.
Yeah, you can kind of think of it as a NaNoWriMo type project for comics with a tighter deadline.
Okay.
It's like when runners run marathons. Like, you don't hear of many marathons that actually have like prizes for the people that get first, but people still run their hearts out because, they're in it for themselves and to show people they can run really fast. Well, it's the same thing with the 24-hour comic. It's partially just an exercise. Like, you can't overthink while you're working on it. You're just making comics. Like, it's a creative rush experience, kind of. And the other part is that, if you do complete it, it's really cool because you're like, hell yeah, I finished this. I made a comic in a day and people can read it and it's done.
Have you ever, within that process, like maybe started an idea and then went a different direction, but then picked up that same idea and maybe expanded upon it further in a larger format?
Not as of yet, but the last 24-hour comic I did definitely take a very different turn from what I originally intended.
So how often do you is that like a once a year tradition, or is that just kind of randomly happen?
It's annual.
So I noticed too with like Chuck, Greg, and I, we all come from like the world of superhero comics. Well, I am and I think Chuck, and we all trying to expand our horizons beyond that, beyond the superheroes. And one thing I noticed, just Crystal, we talked about coloring, and one thing that just struck out my mind with a lot of the coloring you use is that it reminds me a great deal of just with the brightness of it, and especially with Jacocha, is that it not necessarily in style, but just in like the
Like
how
the
the
color
colors really
palette?
pop. Like how the color palette. There you go. I told you I am artistic illiterate.
It is fun to listen to you try and talk about this kind of stuff, though, Dan.
Yeah. It reminded me of a lot of a comic book I recently started that I loved, which was Saga, because just how bright and cheery, and just like how I just immediately stood out to me. So is that something I
take that as the highest compliment, because Saga is one of my favorite comics ever.
Yeah. So you're also a fan, I'm assuming.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Both in story and the art. I really, really like Saga. Gosh.
So is that the type of comic that I noticed with your stories? You all, I mean, I should say that you have a variety of different stories, not just one, but there seems to be more of like a adventure type of feel to them. Is that kind of what you see yourself gravitating toward?
Oh, I do.
Okay, so let me clarify, because you started out asking about color, and now you're asking about story. So are you asking if I gravitate towards a certain color palette or a certain type of story?
No, I was saying that the color of it really reminds me of the upbeat adventure of something like Saga, just because it kind of grabs you. So the colors that you're using, what type of process do you go through in choosing how you want your comic to look?
It's a little different for each comic. Like Jacocha, M came to me with a specific concept, and she actually does the flat colors for her comics, so she gets a lot of sway in picking what the sort of colors are for all of the objects. That being said, I tend to overrule her all the time in changing what the atmospheric colors are in a given scene, because I really love to give each scene, not even like a whole chapter, but like bit by bit, I like to give it like a specific sort of a lighting effect in that scene. Like when there's a sunset, there'll be like really warm colors cast over people and really like warm shadows with a hint of purple, like pinks and purples going on with like golden light. And M came to me initially for the entire comic and said she wanted to do like a Wizard of Oz thing, which is why chapter 1 starts out in like completely black and white, and then Jacocha is just this like shock of color, because we really wanted it to be like night and day, like the real world is boring and Jacocha is crazy.
That was actually going to be my next question, because I was to Emily regarding that, because I did feel that way. I'm like, I just with the black and white and just that opening shot of that land, which was it reminded me very much of that, or even something like going through the wardrobe in like Narnia, just that open scope of a new world that you kind of just like, wow, here it is. And so I was curious if that was the intention there.
Absolutely.
Yep, flat out. Entirely the intention. If that's how you felt, then you got it.
Wow. I did something right today. I appreciate that. And I can write that down in my
To let me get one more thing in. So like that was what M gave me as a startup for Jacocha, and I get a lot of play in there, like during the battle scene in, I think it's chapter 3, when Nifty and Koala are sparring. Like I went to town with giving the whole thing like a really orangey sunset cast, and I even like kind of winged it with a lot of the cloud backgrounds. M can attest that I like clouds way too much, which is great, because my other comic Skyborne that I'm working on is all about like an entire colony of people that live in the sky. So I get lots of chances to draw clouds and have people talking about like the weather and clouds and flying and stuff. And when I went to Skyborne, like I've got a completely different thing I started out with, which is that one's based off medieval Europe, and I wanted to give the color palette a much, much more subdued tone. It still ends up way too bright sometimes, but that's partially just my coloring style. And then it hasn't come in too much, but when magic starts to play a part in that story, the magic is super saturated, so that it's really easy to tell apart from like normal, mundane things that are happening.
Interesting. I feel like I am like becoming more artistic literate, I should say, just hearing you talk. So I do appreciate that. So Emily, kind of getting back to what we were talking about with the adventure story. So you mentioned that is something that you gravitate towards. You're a fan of the adventure tale, and especially you mentioned like Wizard of Oz and things of that nature.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Are there any specific influences beyond that of Wizard of Oz that you feel like kind of influenced the work that you do?
There are a lot of animes that I watched growing up that really have influenced my storytelling style. Like I drew a lot from Magic Knight Rayearth and The Mysterious Play. More recently, I've been drawing from Saga, of course, Rat Queens. any like high fantasy, high adventure stories.
Very interesting. So I feel like I'm a part of this club now. Now that I've heard people talk about Saga, now I can actually partake in that conversation.
You're welcome, Dan.
we had a homework episode a few episodes ago, and basically the purpose of that was to kind of give people the opportunity. Like, we gave each other assignments, and the assignment Greg gave me was that of Saga. So I loved it, and so I've been kind of absorbing that type of comic and kind of getting beyond the superhero realm, which I still enjoy. I'm not gonna lie. I noticed like that's not necessarily some comics that you draw, but do you at all enjoy the superhero stories as well, or are you more so into the, like you mentioned, anime and things or in the role playing? And
I don't read superhero comics as much as I used to, but I didn't really get into American comics in general until I hit college. I've been meaning to pick up a few superhero comics more recently, mostly stuff that like Kelly Sue DeComic and Gail Simone are working on because I idolize them. But I definitely gravitate more towards independent stuff.
Yeah. I see. I find myself doing that first. My love first and foremost is movies, and mostly independent films. And I think I kind of got washed out with superhero comics, but got back in with some of the more independent things, seeing the cool like ideas that people are having outside of the norm. And I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that I learned about your studio and what you do based upon the Square City Comics anthology, which the way that I describe it, it's like almost like a movie trailer for comics or independent comics, or like a film festival or a comic festival within one comic, because it's a combination of a bunch of different independent stories all in one book, or now 2 books, I believe. Can you kind of go into what Square City Comics is and like how you got involved in that project?
Sure. Square City Comics is a DC-based collective of independent cartoonists. I came into the group basically when it started in 2010, I think.
Wow, was it really that early?
Yeah, it really was. I got invited by one of my other friends, Scott Captor. And it started out just being like 4 to 6 of us who would meet once a month to talk about our projects. We started doing shows together, started getting more people involved, and now we've got over 100 members based in the Baltimore, Northern Virginia, DC area. And it's really just a club of people who like to create comics. We talk about our projects, we collaborate on things, and we just help each other out.
That's very interesting. So have you, you mentioned like that's like you help collaborate. Wow, I cannot say that word. You work with each other to create comics. Have you had, have other members of Square City Comics and in that grouping helped you out with other comics that you've been currently working on?
They haven't really had any involvement in the projects I'm currently working on, but I'm about to team up with one of our other members for our next anthology project, and I'm working on another project with one of the other founding members. So
very interesting. And I know there's like online comics and this type of form has becoming more and more popular. What is it like being in that situation where you guys are talking about, doing the 24-hour comics, getting hours of sleep, very, very little hours of sleep doing your work? What is the climate like right now for independent comics? Do you feel like it is opening and welcoming? And you mentioned with Square City that you guys work with each other. Do you find that's kind of the universal feeling for those people, or is it still like rather competitive and like hard to kind of get noticed in that field?
I'd like to actually clarify something, which is that, I mean, technically a webcomic and an independent comic and the Square City Comics group, they're not all the same thing. I mean, there's people that are at Square City Comics that have actually done projects or work for the mainstream studios. Oh, wow. And there are webcomics that are actually being put out by larger studios and larger creators. And vice versa, you could be an independent creator and not have a webcomic.
Yeah, I just, actually, last few weeks I talked about The Private Eye from Brian Kane Vaughan, his online-only comic that is available through the Panel Syndicate, I believe.
Yeah, I believe Scott McCloud even had one comic that he entirely published through the web.
So maybe I should clarify my question, just regarding that of independent comics there and trying to get noticed and get people to, kind of buy into what you're doing.
I think it's absolutely welcoming. As far as getting your product out there and getting noticed, it's kind of hard to say, but I have come across nothing but open arms from other independent creators and great advice and all kinds of awesome things.
Super welcoming from other creators. super cold, desolate void for readership sometimes. It's really tough, especially if you're not like a trained marketer and you're not like a viral marketing guru and you're not already like a really well-known popular personality. And if you're not a super people person, I might come off deceptively talking over the internet, but I'm terrible at the sales pitch. I am terrible at this whole networking thing. I'm still not sure what the hell that buzzword means, really.
I don't think anybody does, but people like using it.
You just throw business cards like Gambit.
Yeah.
That's going to be my new tactic.
Oh, man, I love that phrase. I'm going to have to use that.
And you can put that on the business card, so that way they're like, oh, okay, I get it, what he's doing here. I see. But yeah, I can understand that, because as someone who does podcasting, and I think there are certainly similarities, I am rather impressed just the work you put in, because I thought, editing a podcast was something, but like, the amount of work you have to do for yours is rather impressive. But it's a similar situation where it's like,
to give you some kudos, me and Em have talked every now and then about doing like a web tutorial series or like a video tutorial series, or like a podcast or something. And every time we like start to poke at the programs to actually do the editing, we're like, this is hard. This takes too long. Screw this. We'll just go back to doing comics.
But yeah, it's similar to that. Like you said, you could put all that stuff in and you don't know if it's really getting to people or, the reaction to it. But, you do it because you enjoy it. Because we started this because myself, I live in Baltimore area. And Greg and Chuck, they live in good old Scranton, PA. So, and we were friends going to college. So this is kind of our opportunity to just kind of hang out virtually. So is that kind of similar to what Wayward Studios? I feel like that probably something similar to what Wayward Studios is to you too, because I know you're on the opposite end of the globe. So that's got to be a good way to kind of continue your friendship in a way that's beyond just, the Facebook chat here and there.
Absolutely.
I think we're only a quarter of a globe apart, but that's still a pretty big distance.
Yes, true. I like a true American. I forget there's countries outside of our own. So,
but no, yeah, me and Em have literally only met up in person twice since college, so only twice in the last 7 years. And one of those was to debut our books at SPX, and the other one was because Em was getting married. I keep ragging her because she still hasn't actually come out to Seattle to see me, so
I will.
She's on the hook for the next visit, but she's still got lots of money to pay off from her wedding.
I can relate to that. So, Emily, you're in the Baltimore area, correct?
Yep.
All right. So, are you from here and moved this in? Is that kind of where your home base has always been?
No, I was born in Minnesota, and then my family moved out to Colorado when I was a kid. So I went to college in Gunnison, which is about 200 miles away from Denver, which is where Crystal and I met.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was actually born in Seattle, went to Germany, went to Arkansas, and then to Colorado because my dad was in the Army. And then I was in Colorado for about 15 years before college. And then I went up to Gunny and met where we both were getting graphic design degrees.
Very nice. Wow. I feel very untraveled because I lived in Scranton and moved to Baltimore, and that's my story. So you guys have been all over. So, wow. Way back when you guys were mentioning with a lot of these comics that you have been working on them since high school, that, they've been stuff with you, that ideas that have been with you. So are within the characters that you're creating, do you see yourself in any of them? Or like, do you feel like your personality is coming through for some of them? Or is it more of a removable experience where you're kind of seeing the eyes through someone else when making that character?
It used to be that the characters were basically another version of me, and my voice came through personally through a lot of them. I've since removed myself a bit more, but each character has a voice I have within myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can understand that.
I've definitely...
Is it the same thing?
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was going to ask if it's the same thing for you or what your process is like.
It's definitely really similar, and like I feel like the longer I'm working with a character, the more I can kind of distance them from myself. But then it is kind of like having multiple personality syndrome. Like, it's like all the little voices in my head, but they're separate characters. That being said, a couple of my stories, there is flat out the character that's like, this is me, but with magical powers, or this is me, but if I was even more obnoxious as a teenager. Like, May from Aspect is flat out like me if I had magical tinker powers. And Leandra from Skyborne actually is based around a lot of my own anxiety issues and stuff.
So I could understand how the previous experience with role playing must really carry into that. If it's since you've kind of done something similar.
Oh God, yeah.
More so the abstract way.
Yeah, role playing games are great in one sense for character building, which is that you have this system. Yeah, it's too much math. If you hate math, then it might seem daunting or silly. Me, I'm actually kind of a math nerd, so I loved it. But it gives you that experience of like, okay, this character has flaws and they have traits and they can't all have positive attributes. They also have negative attributes. And like, it gives you that experience of like keeping this idea of like all the traits of a character in your head and imagining how they would like react to various situations. If you've got a good DM, that's one of the great things in role-playing is that it's not just like, roll a d20 to see if you get poisoned. It's also stuff like, this character just asked if they could sleep with you. What is your character's response?
Yes.
And like, if you have a good DM and you're in a good situation that's more story-driven, then you get to make decisions like that, and you can option to like play off things. Like, sometimes some of the most hilarious stuff is like, if a character is promiscuous or isn't promiscuous, or like, is in a situation where they're a character that takes advantage of people more or doesn't, And it also teaches you about, like, letting other people, like, because you're with other human beings who also have characters that they have agendas for, it also teaches you a little bit about, like, group dynamics.
Okay.
That, some of the worst experiences are when everybody's trying to go after their own goals and they're going in 5 different directions, and meanwhile the dragon's eating people.
Yeah, I could see that's like a situation where you kind of have to put yourself out of your norm and kind of think differently than, kind of open up your mind a little bit compared to just like your, the way you normally process things.
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things for me writing characters is when I have to write a character that couldn't figure something out that I can figure out, or can figure something out that I can't. Like, I'm a complete social... how would I put it? Like, socially inept, like...
Hey, that's me.
Politics make no sense to me in the microcosm. I understand the big stuff, like money goes in the economy, money leaves the economy, bad stuff happens, wars. But when it comes to, like, office politics, like the interpersonal communication between human beings, I can offend someone without even trying, and they can offend me without trying, and I never seem to be able to get my way in a group of people that I can't just flat out yell at. So, like, to try and write a character that is savvy is really difficult for me because I have no clue how that works.
So how do you kind of overcome that?
Ask other people sometimes.
I guess that's a good spot to have a partner to go to when it comes to coming up with ideas. Or Emily, do you find yourself being the person to tell her how to? And in a normal situation, this is how someone would act. Is that kind of what you see yourself doing with your storytelling?
Oh yeah, we do this with each other. We catch our characters doing things
actually
they
fall
shouldn't
into.
do.
Yeah, a lot of writers actually fall into that exact problem. Not even like socially inept writers like me. That it sounds great in your head, and then you read it out loud to someone else, or they read your comic, and they're like, why the hell would this person be asking for ice cream right now? They just got hit by a car. What's going on here? Like, sometimes that's an extreme, silly example that's not even from any story I've written, but gosh, Em had a scene the other day that, like, she had a character and she was trying to hide something from the character and make the character, like, miss some of the things that were happening, and she kind of overdid it, and it sounded fine when she wrote it, but when she read it off to me, I'm like, okay, she's not Barbie. She's not that dumb. You gotta tone it back. And she's done that to me, where I had characters that were just, like, too far off one end or the other, and, she had to kind of put it in perspective for me. That's the greatest part of having a co-conspirator, is having that sort of echo chamber.
It's a sounding board.
A sounding board. There you go. That's the word I was looking for.
Interesting. Yeah. Have there been moments in which you feel like you both have disagreed and maybe you weren't, and basically you're like, all right, I don't care what you say, I'm gonna do it this way? Or do you feel like you're always able to come to that compromise or figure out, a way that you both will be satisfied with the solution?
There have been plenty of times where we just had to ignore the other person.
I don't think there's any time that we've, like, completely wholeheartedly flat out ignored them, though. I think we've gotten to a point that, like,
there's usually some kind of compromise, but...
Yeah.
I could see that. I mean, so I do like movie reviews, which are nothing compared to that because it's easy because I'm just reacting towards something else. But Greg, I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity, but we do this little radio skit thing on here called The Unknown, and Greg comes up with it because he fancies himself a writer as well. So I'm sure
do
Greg,
not fancy myself a writer at all. I nearly failed the grammar class. Like,
you could probably relate to that when it comes to creating characters and storytelling.
Come on, you don't have to have grammar to do good writing. I mean, look at all the money that ICANN Cheeseburger made.
That's true. Except I have to. The characters that I've been trying to write for it are at least semi-intelligent, as opposed to the one character where I just had him freaking out the entire time and just yelling stuff, or kind of like I am Groot, but not repeating the same phrase and just doing grunts and stuff. But I have tried to write, and it's hard to keep in your mind, especially if you're taking vacations or just have time in between where you don't have to do it, and trying to get back into each character's frame of mind and remembering what you wrote last and trying to keep that the continuity the same and not try to mess stuff up like that.
Yeah, no, I actually get exactly what you're talking about. So during college, I worked on a comic, and when I moved out of college, my hard drive died. Completely died. Took my entire senior project with me, which was the latest version of Aspect that I had done before college. I got so pissed off that I had lost 2 chapters worth of pages that I just kind of scrapped it and gave up. I was tired of it. I didn't have any more ideas. And about 6 months later, I got hit really suddenly, but with inspiration for this story that I ended up calling Lannick's Journey. I ended up writing out an entire 300 page, and by 300 pages I mean 8.5 by 11 at 12-point font, way too long. 300 pages over the next 9 months, and there were times it was really tough to pick it up if I had taken a week off, because I would look back at the chapter and I couldn't remember where I was at, or why the character was in the position she was in, or what the final goal of the story I was working on was even anymore. It's really tough to keep your macro goals of a longer story in mind and your smaller goals at the same time. Keeping the chapter interesting while still working towards whatever that last chapter that you had in mind was. And making the pieces line up from A to Z when you still have to figure out how to get to N in the middle there somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's probably the hardest part of working on a comic, because the entire process is slowed down by tenfold. I try not to think about the fact that if I stay at my current pace, Skyborne will be done sometime a decade from now.
So with Skyborne or Jacocha, do you all have the idea of where you want the story to go and you're just trying to get there, or are you still kind of on that path of figuring out, where this exactly will be, and you're kind of just letting it naturally evolve?
I know where Jacocha's going. Have my end in mind, I just have to get there.
It's kind of like Lord of the Rings. The Hobbit has the ring. Mount Doom is off somewhere in the distance. You know that at some point Ring will meet lava. And in between is a lot of walking and random occurrences. And that's kind of how my Skyborne script is that I have all of it really loosely scripted out. There's important points that have to happen. But the in-between, the entire dialogue word for word is not written out.
Okay.
I have notations they got on a boat, they fly through the sky, they have to hit this city, they have to do this has to happen, they have to have a fight about this.
So like you mentioned, it's more the macro, it's the micro that you're still working with, the more the minutia of the fun process.
Well, and you have to kind of leave yourself something interesting to do. I was at one point thinking I had to write the entire script out, and I was getting so bogged down by trying to work out all of the details of the entire 6-book script that I wasn't interested in actually working on the pages anymore, and so it was just killing me. So I finally was screw it, I have to throw my hands up and not work too far ahead, or I'm just gonna get completely bored of working off my own script. Then I just become my own manager for the next 10 years,
I kind of have that issue as well with trying to write something longer. There's certain, what kind of tips do you have for people that, are trying to write and then they keep getting bogged down in different things? Is it just take a break, or...
So if you're talking about just explicitly writing...
Yeah.
What I did on Lannick's Journey was I basically made a document for any of the chapters I had worked out. and like I skipped ahead, like if I was like stuck on this chapter, but like I had a good idea for another chapter, I'd work on the next chapter. And like for me that works because I'm a much more fluid creative personality. Mm-hmm. I've talked to some people who are really successful in creative endeavors, and they have the opposite thing, that they just have to force themselves through it. And sometimes I do have to, and that's part of actually why me and Em publishes a webcomic, is that having that deadline, even though it's artificial, like no one's going to dock our pay, no one's going to yell at us if we miss a page update. We have gotten frowny faces of people that leave us passive aggressive comments like, darn, I wish this comic updated on time.
I know the feeling of passive aggressive comments.
We're lucky that we do not have super evil troll commenters that like our comic. We're really lucky in that case, because there are some comics that do get that, and other, creative things on the web. YouTube is, the most notorious for it.
Oh, jeez, yeah. I don't even you can get a video of just a kitten like being cute, and you're gonna have like the most vicious remarks underneath it. It's kind of creepy.
And the most creepy, like people will be like, "Man, I hope that kitten rapes you," and you're like, "What?"
That escalated rather quickly.
But what I'm trying to say is having little goals for yourself, it is a nice way of keeping yourself in check. So, like, if you are doing, like, a novella, you could be like, I'm going to post a chapter once a week on the site, and it'll be public, and people can read it, so there's proof that it exists, and there's proof that I'm staying on track, but if I miss a week, like, I don't get a scoop of Nutella ice cream. It's not the worst thing in the world.
Then I always feel, if I do something like that, I feel like I'm going to screw myself over. Like I'm trying to set up something big, and I accidentally let something leak out in that part, like that I've already posted. And then, like, I'm down the line, I'm like, I already let that leak. That's a big, huge thing. And now how do I fix it now? Like,
so you're saying, like, you're worried that you might, like, post something inflammatory and not be able to take it back? Or, like, oh crap, I posted chapter 17 and I meant to post chapter 12.
Well, that could be an issue if I'm really...
Because in that case, you just, like, pull it back off the internet and go, oh, it's an Easter egg, you guys got to see it early, aren't you glad to check my website? But all those people that don't check it, like, immediately at midnight, you didn't get to see it, tee-hee. Like, you can totally cover
a screen grab of it, you guys. Look, here it is again. Thank you, commenter. Appreciate that. Bastard. Like, stuff like that, and then... like just like another continuity issue going on of getting too far ahead of yourself or putting yourself in a corner, like I have probably done a couple times trying to write Unknown.
Well, and that's one thing that we worry about sometimes with comics. That's sort of the nature of bad writing in comics, is because, like, if you did something in chapter 1 and then chapter 5, you really wish you hadn't, like, oh, the character had their power stone stolen, but I really wish she had it right here because I don't know how to get her out of this endless pit that she fell into.
Yeah, exactly.
Why did I write her falling into an endless pit? This was a terrible idea, but now it's drawn. So now it's not only in writing, it's been drawn, it's been colored. I gotta find a way out of this pit. So that's why you end up with those, like, bad 50s serials, bad comics writing, is because, it's literally set in stone, or at least it's set in a printing plate, so there ain't no going back. But that's one of the joys of the internet, is it's not set in stone, it's set in pixels at the very worst. So you can go back and fix it. You can always post a comment, be like, hey guys, I know it might seem like a cop-out that I'm changing chapter 1 so that she doesn't get the power stone stolen, but it's gonna work out a lot better and she's not gonna fall into an infinite pit, and I think you're really gonna like this writing in chapter 12, but go back and read chapter 1 again or you won't know why she has this. I've seen comic artists do that, and it's something you're giving to people for free. It's a fluid thing that's a work in progress, which is probably why the whole web to Kickstarter thing has been so successful for comics. Because, people, I think, understand that most webcomics are meant to be, like, the preliminary stage. Like, they're not the end result. They're something that you're sharing with people in order to spread the word and get feedback.
Mm-hmm. But do you feel like that takes people out of the story if you do something like that?
Maybe a little bit, but I mean, I think people's... Because what you're talking about is, what do they call it? The fourth wall, the plausible deniability. Mm-hmm. Oh, gosh, what is it? I'm trying to think of the word. It's like the experience that, like, suspension of disbelief.
Okay.
I think people's suspension of disbelief is a lot more... It's usually a lot more... Oh, God, I'm missing my words tonight.
Forgiving?
Forgiving. Oh, that's a good word. That's not what I was looking for, but that fits. Yeah, I think it's a lot more forgiving than you might think it is. And I mean, the second you've got someone reading a comic on the internet, like, they're clicking buttons, they're looking at ads and things, like, from what I've seen of the internet, usually the more they get hints that, like, their creator exists, usually the more they like the project.
Yeah, the more involved they feel, the more contact they have with you.
Yeah,
because we kind of do that with comments and stuff with the podcast. We get a lot of comments, and I feel like the more we participate, the more people we have kind of listening in.
Yeah.
Do you feel, as people, like you mentioned, being the forgiveness and kind of being part of that process and realizing that sometimes you can write yourself in the corner, as in those that, like you mentioned, that you're readers of comics, when you're more on the fan side, are you then more forgiving of that, of people who are creating comics, because you realize, okay, I can understand, or appreciate the difficulty in making something that is great because you have the experience of trying it yourself?
Well, I definitely am.
I find in some ways I'm more forgiving, and in other ways I'm less. Like, I find over time, like, I start to drop, like, comics that are written or drawn more poorly off my list. Like, the better I become as a writer and artist, the less I'm able to tolerate really bad writing and really bad art. Especially when it doesn't improve over time. There's comics I've flat out dropped just because I got sick of the writer falling into the same really poor tropes, or, like, an artist that just is still doing really ugly artwork constantly.
Rob Liefeld.
Wait, what?
Rob Liefeld. He's a notoriously bad comic book artist.
Let's not draw the feet. Good feet.
Yeah, he would make shoulders that look like, gigantic and really tiny heads. It's like everyone looked like a negative bobblehead. It was weird.
If you're familiar with the Escher girls, go look them up and you'll find lots of Liefeld there.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Escher girl?
So Emily, is that similar for you, that you mentioned that you are more forgiving based upon your experience creating comics?
I'm more forgiving of people who go back and fix things, but I still, if I'm 6 or 7 chapters in and, like Crystal said, if the art hasn't improved or the story has not really moved anywhere, forget it, I'm done.
So regarding that improvement, do you feel like throughout this process, you yourself have evolved and become a better writer, a better artist than you have been in the past? And
I have definitely gotten a lot better at all aspects of creating comics since Crystal and I teamed up and since becoming a part of Square C Comics.
You know the biggest confidence booster? Looking at your old artwork.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. My friend Ricky, the one who's doing my flats, she didn't know that I had done a version of the comic in college. So I'm like, oh, I still have a copy of it in print. Here, take a look at it. And I was looking over her shoulder as she looked at it, and I was like cringing every other page. I'm just like, this is so bad. And this was my college senior project? This is terrible.
wow.
And like, I realized that at the time, I was super proud of that. I remember being ridiculously proud of it. And I could still see positive aspects of it, but at the same time, it was really kind of affirming that yes, 7 years later, I did actually improve. I might not be constantly in college anymore, and I might not have been like trying to improve, but it was improved. And so, like, I would recommend that to any writer or artist or creative, is keep enough of your old work around to make you feel better when you find it in the future.
Yeah,
like, don't throw all of your crappy old drawings away, because you'll want to bring them out so you can pat yourself on the back for not sucking that hard anymore.
It's a very, very good point. Good point. So do you feel like you'll be the same way if you fast forward 10 years from now?
Yeah, 10 years from now, we're going to look at our art now and think, God, what were we thinking?
Yeah. I don't remember who said it, but there was a writer and a creative person, it was like a comic artist at one point, that said something about, like, you should never plateau. If you plateau and your stuff is as good as it's going to get, then you're not going to get any better. And, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. So, like, he basically said, like, I hope to always look back at my older stuff and think it, and see the flaws in it, because he's getting better.
Interesting. Very cool. So you mentioned with your current comics that you kind of know where you want to go. Do you have other ideas and other comic ideas that you're kind of waiting to start to get into that you're also developing? Like, is that something you feel like you're always going to have something that you can continue your project and continue to go to?
We both have a folder that we refer to as the vault that is just a plethora of ideas, just short snippets of things, extensive outlines.
I want to point out that the vault was my word, and
yes, I stole the word vault. Yes,
it's a Google Doc. In fact, I have it shared with Em, so she can like write comments and she can update it if she feels like it. And it's just page after page with an index at the top, so I can find ideas and I can like do a digital search, like a Control F search of it. And it's helped sometimes. I don't remember. Em grabbed one idea out of there the other day. I don't remember which, and she ran with it. And I took one for the 24-hour comic. I've got one called Jacocha that I based off of this idea that Em had actually pointed out to me about this creepy petrified lake in Africa that we thought would make a good horror comic.
Interesting.
Yes. Wow. I hope to bring that one out sometime in the spring.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating. But we're near our hour here, and I don't want to take, you said the 1 more hour of your 4 hours of sleep away. But
I'm not getting 4 hours of sleep anymore. I'm much better now. I actually had to go through therapy earlier this year, and one of the things my therapist made me start doing was actually getting a proper night's sleep. So I have an alarm on my phone now to make sure I don't go to bed at 2 a.m. anymore.
Jeez. See, I am like 80 years old, and I can barely get past 9:30 anymore. So I'm itching towards my bedtime right now. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like
you guys are East Coast. I have to forgive you guys, because over here it's like 6:30. I could stay up another 6 hours.
I think you guys had a lot of great pointers, a lot of great ideas, and if people want to get in contact with you or get access to your stuff, where can they go?
You can find us on our main website, which is waywardstudios.net. We're also on Facebook as Wayward Studios Comics. We have a Twitter, which is just at Wayward Studios.
We also have a Google Plus page, which I think is Wayward Studios Net. If you just Google search Wayward Studios Google Plus, you'll find us.
See, you're a lot better at that networking than you let on.
Except what you didn't hear from that is that we're like terrible about actually posting. I think our last Google Plus post was from like a year ago.
You could be like me.
We have a Tumblr.
That's right, we have a Tumblr now, which is also
we have individual Tumblrs too, and we each have individual DeviantArt pages too.
Great. And what I'll do too is I will put all access to links to all your stuff online, because you can even buy your comics online as well. Is that am I not?
That's correct.
We have a storefront, a Store NV storefront, which you can just find through the Wayward Studios website. There's links all over the place to it through the various subcomics.
And like I said, I would definitely recommend checking out their stuff, because I read it, I was appreciative. I'm like, I would really like to talk to these people and figure out how they come up with this stuff, because I couldn't imagine doing it. But I would really like to thank you guys for coming on. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed your time. Definitely have you on some other time. But I wish you the best of luck with everything that you all do.
Same to you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks. This was great.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Or ladies.
Yes,
we have ladies to talk to. What is this? This is weird.
Yeah.
You should, you should fix that, because actually, from what I've seen, is webcomics are a lot more gender neutral than mainstream comics are. Like, if you threw a dart at a webcomic artist, there's like a 1 out of 2 chance that it's a girl that you're hitting, not a guy.
Oh wow!
So that's one of the great things about the internet that you didn't even come up with. Is the fact that, like, the internet means that you don't have to deal with, the boy-centric monopoly that is most of the mainstream comics. I actually meant to comment on you guys way earlier when you were talking about superhero comics, is that I really find it sad that people think that superhero comics is a genre, like, it's sort of a subgenre. And the fact that people think superhero comics need to be this separate thing from other stories. Like, I would hope that anyone would just read good stories, that they read romance and action and horror and adventure and like spy stories and slice of life and like autobiographical stuff, like that they would really just open themselves up to all sorts of stories from all sorts of creators, and that comics can tell any kind of story if the artist and the writer are up to the task of that given story.
I've been an ignorant person towards that for a very long time, but I am just recently in the last few years kind of seeing, just like you said, the power of comics is just like any other artistic medium where you can kind of really attack anything, go after any type of idea, whether it be, even a social political idea, or if it's more, fanatical or fantasy. So you're very right. I mean, it's true that sometimes when you say the word comic, you either think the Sunday comics that you get in a newspaper back when those existed, or the the superhero stuff. But clearly, like, stuff like that you all put out, and even like we mentioned, things like Saga or other independent comics, like that, there is clearly an unlimited tap to be reached there. So that's very true.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, truly appreciate you going on, and like I mentioned, check out their stuff. It's great. Do it. It's free too, or you can also support them, which is also great. And support independent comic artists or independent artists. I think those are the focus that we should definitely be going towards, because Marvel and DC, they have enough money. It's people like Wayward Studios. That's the people that you should be supporting. So, well, wish you all the best of luck, and again, thanks for coming on. I hope our questions weren't too bad. I do.
No, this was a lot of fun. I really appreciate you guys having us on.
Appreciate it. We'll talk to you later.
All right.
Thanks, ladies. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye. So that is it for us for this week. We'll be back next week, same time, same channel, same podcast feed. But for now, we've been talking in circles, and we'll see you next week.